Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Assalamu rahmatullah.
I'd like to pose a question which is related a lot to current days and what we're facing today. Our society today, one of the biggest problems facing the Muslim society is the high divorce rates. And this is actually getting worse and worse every year, particularly in Malaysia. And the statistics have shown that it's growing. It may have to do with a lot of factors. It could be stress of work, it could be family issues. My question is, how can we derive from the ways of the Prophet to prevent this, considering the women of today and the women of the Prophet's time are quite different in their behaviors. The women of today, many of them are highly intelligent, many of them are independent, and hence the submissiveness as you would have in Islam is probably a lot lesser, and they tend to challenge men as well. And as you know, men don't like to be challenged, particularly by women. So how do we address this for men? Where can we draw knowledge and experience so that we are able to address these issues, particularly at home?
Okay. The first thing I want to say is that you said that divorce rate amongst Muslims is very high. I just want to say that it's not only amongst Muslims that the divorce rate is high. Amongst non-Muslims, it's also extremely high. I come from the UK, and the statistics of the United Kingdom of divorce rate in general is sky high. And the Muslims in the United Kingdom are about 2%. So in reality, they're non-existent in comparison, right? So most of that divorce rate is not going to be of the Muslims, it's going to be of the non-Muslims, right? So in general, it's a worldwide phenomena that divorce rate is extremely high, number one. Number two, women of the modern day are intelligent. The women of the earlier day were extremely intelligent also. We should not undermine the women of the early days of Islam. Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, she was a genius of a scholar. She was one of the six highest, she was one of the six most learned Sahaba. And she narrated the most hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she was a critical analyst of hadith. She wasn't just a passive person who narrated hadith, she was a critical analyst. So much so that Imam Badruddin al-Zarkashi radiallahu anh wrote an entire book called Al-Ijabatu fi mastadrakathu Aishatu ala sahaba. The matters in which Aisha would critique the Sahaba upon, right? And like this, we have many other examples of the high levels of scholarship amongst the Muslim women folk from the early days. One of my teachers from Damascus, Shaykh Mahmoud Beiruti, who was also a very big, he had a very big publishing house of books, and he would travel around the world for manuscripts and books and etc. And one of the things that he told us was that he came across a handwritten Quran by a Muslim woman in Muslim Spain 800 years ago. Handwritten Quran by a Muslim woman from Muslim Spain dating back to 800 years. When the modern day women of Europe have only been able to engage in education for the past 100 years or so, right? So my second point is that we should not undermine the intelligence and the education of the earlier women of Islam. If in modern society women are educated, we would not have reached this level of scholarship of Islam had it not been for the women folk, right? Imam al-Shafi'i, this land is of the land of the Shafi'is, right? And they say that this land is more Shafi'i than Shafi'i, right? I only heard that last night. Imam al-Shafi'i radiallahu anh, he was an orphan. His father died when he was young. Who was it that took him from Gaza to Mecca to educate him? His mother. Had she not been educated herself and intelligent herself, why would she have taken her son all the way to Mecca for him to learn education? She would have she would have said to him, okay, you need to go and start working. I'm a single mother. She was a single mother and took her son to Makkah to study, then to Medina to study until he became a scholar. Imam al-Bukhari, this man who in the entire ummah of Islam is indebted to, his mother was a single mother. She took him through the levels of education. Why? Because she was intelligent herself. Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jailani radiyallahu anh, his mother was a single mother. His father died when he was young. It was his mother who sent him from Jalan all the way to Baghdad to study. Imam al-Ghazali radiyallahu anh, his father died when he was a young boy. It was his mother who sent him out to seek knowledge and education. So the second point is that the women in modern society, they are intelligent without a doubt. They have education without a doubt. But the women of the days of Islam have always been educated. And this is a stereotype that the non-Muslims have thrown upon us, that the women of Islam have not been educated. But rather, this is a fault of their own selves that they are throwing upon us. In the entire Muslim world, you will find madrasas for women that date back to 1,000 years. The scholarship of women, the women's scholarship in Islam dates back to the beginning of Islam. We can with confidence say we have women's scholarship in our religion for the past 1400 years. And we can document it and we can bring proof and evidence for it. Right? So this is something that we should not fall for the Western media stereotyping of Muslim women, that they have not been educated. No. That's number 2. Number 3, the submissiveness of a woman to her husband, this must be understood in a very natural way, right? And human beings in the modern society have really moved away from natural living, right? Natural living. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the man in a particular way and the woman in a particular way. And even in our physiques, we are different, right? And nobody denies this. But yet, we want to make an absolute comparison and match in other matters, right? So, we have to understand the role of the husband and the role of the wife in the Muslim house, right? We have to understand the roles of both of them. And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divided the roles in accordance to the capacities of both husband and wife. Right? The capacity of the husband is in his strength, is in bearing tough jobs, whereas the capacity of the woman is in more gentle works, in more calmer works, in more works of texture and color and care and tenderness, which the husband doesn't have. But when we pick up the role of a woman and try to drop it on the man, and the role of the man and drop it onto the woman, that's when we have the breakup in society. I'll give you an example. I have a friend who is he's a physician, he's a doctor, and he accepted Islam about 20 years ago or so. Very good friend of mine. And he used to come to my house, and we used to read some books and study. One day he said to me, his parents are non-Muslim. He said to me, it's really amazing how in Islam, women must travel with a mahram. Women must travel with a mahram. He said, this has really amazed me. I said, why? He said, because you know, every time my mom travels all alone and something goes wrong for her, she picks up the phone and she argues with my father saying, why didn't you come with me? And she gives him a mouthful when things go wrong for her. He said, from that situation I understood that the woman folk needs the companionship of a man, because the man has the strength with him. Right? But in a normal day-to-day life, the women wouldn't feel this. But when the pressure drops on them, that's when they realize. But Islam wants them to realize this before the pressure drops, so that the pressure doesn't drop on them. Right? So that they can stay within their soft, gentle nature, and the pressure drops on the husband. But the modern world doesn't want to accept this. And the modern world not accepting it doesn't mean it's incorrect. Doesn't mean it's backward. Doesn't mean that Muslims and Islam needs to change its way. Islam and Muslims will never change their way, because our way is set. And it's perfect, and it's absolute, and it's universal for every time and every place. Whereas the trends of the world are so ugly that they have to be changed every week. The trends of the world, they are so ugly. Today they have this style, and tomorrow they will have that style. They are constantly changing. For example, one day I was delivering a lesson, and one young lad who used to attend the lesson, suddenly he walked into the lesson. I was shocked. He had grown his beard, bigger than mine, and he had a big mustache. I was like, whoa, this guy's become extra righteous, right? I did not know why he grew his beard so big and big mustache. Until I went to the city center in Birmingham, the Bull Ring, to do some shopping, and I walked around and I saw on the billboards pictures of men with big beards and big mustache. That's when I realized that this young lad has grown his beard and big mustache because of the trend has changed. Right? Now, that same society that looked towards the beard and the mustache as something abhorrent has now picked it up. And then, when they're bored of that, they'll go back to shaving. They can't make up their mind. Right? But Islam has made up its mind. And the mind that Islam has made up is universal. It can work for every place and every time and every people. That's what we need to engage in. Whereas if we fall for the changes of modern society, we're going to become bankrupt, because their changes are too often and too much. Right? And it's from the miracle of Islam. It's from the miracle of Islam that the trends of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam have been practiced for 1400 years without change, and the Muslims are not bored of them. The trends of the Prophet, the Muslims are not bored of them. You will walk around the earth, wherever you go, you will still find Muslims adopting in the styles and the ways of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because we're not bored of them. We know we have a leader who set the trend, and when he sets it, he doesn't change it. And there is always a relevance to it. And this is something amazing. You know, Habib Ali there, he's from amongst our elders, right? If Habib Ali speaks to us about a movie he watched 60 years ago, we're going to say to him, Habib Ali, it's not relevant to us now, we're people of the modern society, we've moved on, right? We'll think what happened 60 years ago is not relevant to our lives. And the world has moved on even quicker. What happened 10 years ago is not relevant to us no more, right? Because every week, the mobile phone brings in a new style and people buy it. So the world has moved on, and relevance has been lost for history. But can you believe? Matters that happened 60 years ago have no relevance to us, but matters that happened 1400 years ago in the life of the Prophet ﷺ have absolute relevance to every Muslim upon the earth. Never when the Prophet is spoken about does any Muslim say, it doesn't have any relevance to me. But rather, every time the Prophet is spoken about, it touches a nerve in the hearts of the Muslims that they feel, this has absolute relevance with me. This is the beauty of our established ways in comparison to the changing trends and styles of the world.